One, two. One, two. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome along to the Public Resources Committee. Welcome to this meeting of Inverclyde Council's Public Resources Committee. This meeting has been held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcasts available through the Council website. The Council is a data controller under General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act of 2018. We broadcast and record Council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during this process will be retained in accordance with Council's published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that you follow the Council's established meeting protocols, including the round of use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received an invite to this meeting. Thank you. Item 1, apologies, substitute declaration of interest.
Convener, we have apologies from Councillor McCormick, be substituted by Councillor Cassidy. We'll move to a roll call. Can the following councillors please indicate if they're present at the meeting? Councillor Armstrong.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Brooks.
In chamber.
Councillor Cassidy.
Present chamber.
Councillor Curley.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Jackson.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Law.
Present remotely.
Councillor McCabe.
Present chamber.
Councillor Maguire.
Present.
Councillor McVeigh.
In chamber.
Councillor Moran.
In the chamber.
Councillor Robertson.
Present remotely.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Yes.
Councillor Maguire.
Yes, I need to declare an interest in item 3. I work part-time for Social Security Scotland, but I have no involvement in the administration or the strategy or any operational element of what's been discussed here, so I don't need to remove myself.
Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you, Chair. It's more just a transparent statement in relation to item 14 in the agenda, the organisation report. So I sit on the board of it representing the council, but I don't believe I have to remove myself from discussion on this paper.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 2, which is the Policy Resources Revenue Budget. And Angela Edison is going to speak to it. Angela.
Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes, you can.
Thank you. This is the first revenue monitoring report for 25-26. It includes the 25-26 and the overall general fund position, the projected and also the projected reserves for the same period. As this is the first report for the financial year, it includes a 24-25 outturn position for the committee, which was reported to the previous committee in an overall position. The current committee position for 25-26 is reflecting an overspend of 71,000, which further details can be found at section 3.5 of the report. The committee outturn for 24 is an underspend of 422,000, and details can be found at section 3.3 and 3.4 of the report. Included with the report is the latest general fund position for 25-26. Appendix 6 will give you the information and shows an overspend of 566,000. This in turn impacts on the free reserves found at Appendix 8 of the report. The free reserves are projected to be below the minimum reserves balance of £4 million, and all directorates will review. The report provides an update also on earmarked reserves, the overall earmarked reserves, the work streams are coming out 25-26. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Angela. Anyone, any questions for Angela? Councillor Jackson.
Yes, maybe a question that's been answered previously. The 566,000 overspend, is this mainly on savings which haven't been achieved?
I don't know if you heard that, Angela. No.
It looks like she's talking but with her microphone on potentially.
Sorry, convener.
Okay.
I did have mute. Yes, I did hear the question, and it's about 566,000 if it's over, if it's due to. It's main at this point of the report. A lot of it will be to do with not achieving of turnover. Turnover target is very low at the start of the year, and it is difficult to achieve or predict the turnover levels at this point. I don't think it relates to unachieved savings. I think it's more to do with current pressures that are coming into the service just now.
Okay.
Maybe that helps.
Yep.
Councillor McVeigh.
Thanks for being a bit question, maybe perhaps for Mr Jamieson. It's on the work stream savings, we've still got a deficit of around 600k over the period. Are we confident we're on target to reach that, Mr Jamieson?
Members will recognise that the workstream savings make some assumptions, and particularly with facilities saving, there's still over £200,000 to be achieved in that instrument. That will require some difficult decisions by members, and officers will be bringing reports before members, both in terms of the members' budget working group and committee for consideration.
Yeah, thanks for being it.
Do any other questions on this item? No. Right. Thank you, Angela. Recommendations. Degree of recommendations. Great. Okay. Item number 3 is the policy associated capital budget and council capital programme. And we have Matt.
Thank you, Nina. Yes, this is the first capital report here. It includes the capital budget for the committee as well as the overall capital programme, and just the bit of information we were in a 4-year programme previously. This is returned to 3 years, and I think the plans to go 3 years ongoing. 4 years was unusual last year. So 1.3 we have the budget for committee itself. It's on budget at the moment. We're reporting no slippage, it's early days, but nothing to report at the moment. And 1.4 we have the overall programme position. So there's an overcommitment of 2.8 million over the 3 years, which is 4.8%, well within our 5%. And there's a wee bit of a gap, but the gap is about maybe £400,000, which over a £69 million 3-year programme is not a huge gap, but at least we do have some wiggle room there. And the position at the moment is we're going advance within the year of £414,000, mainly within E&R and education at this stage. That's all the details we give you at the moment. We'll have to take any questions.
Anybody got any questions? No, none online. Okay, thank you, Matt. Recommend we note petition. Agenda item 4 and finance service update. And again, back to Angela. Angela.
Thank you, convener. The usual report, which gives an update on the finance services and a number of matters that relate to the service. You can see in the report section 1.3 a summary of those areas. I probably would just highlight the main things just now is round about council tax SMS messaging. The update is what the report is providing an update change to the use of the SMS messaging for council tax reminders. It is proposed to introduce a service from October 25, and this will entail sending an SMS message to prompt late pay missed instalment. This will be done prior to a council tax reminder notice being issued, and the main aim is to reduce the costs associated with reminder notices. I would also highlight about savings strategy. This relates to an audit action dating back to the 23-24 annual accounts. and rather than present it as a separate report, I've included it in here. The proposal is to update the medium-term financial strategy, the financial outlook section, with a savings plan. The initial steps is identifying the process to closing the budget gap, but it is proposed in this section is reviewed every 6 months in line with the financial strategy, and with any further decisions taken being reflected going forward. And finally, there's a section been added for the use of emergency powers, and this is in section 3.26 and 3.28 of the report, and the committee the use of the emergency powers to award a contract for the provision of transport for children with additional support medical needs for the period 25-26 and 26-27. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Angela. Mr. Councillor Curley.
Thank you, Convener. Just through yourself, with respect to paragraph 3.3, and I note statement the council sees the budget collection rate for all years up to including 2019-2020. I was just wondering, and I note that it says that the council tax collection for 24-25 currently stands at 94.8%. Can you advise what the assumed council tax collection rate is for that particular year?
Yes, through you. 96.5% is the budgeted collection rate for council tax.
So at the moment we're still slightly below our budgeted collection rate. So it takes a number of years for us to get up to that sort of level. Thank you for that.
Yes.
So following on from that, I've got a sort of question, if that's okay, Convener.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Item 3.8, which talks about the bad debt provision of 22.613, but our gross debt at the moment is 26.118, leaving a net debt of 3.505. What sort of impact would that have on our revenue budget assumptions going forward if we're carrying this sort of level of debt?
Sorry, through your convener. We always do have a level of debt that we're carrying for the council tax, and that debt position is based on not just council tax, it's based on the sundry debt as well as industrial and commercial debt. So that's a whole debt for the council in that picture. It is a moving target all the time. We do have debt provision in place for at different rates depending if it's council tax or the sundry debt. So we do have that position covered through a bad debt policy.
But I think my question was more the case of it's actually our debt is above our bad debt provision. So obviously we've taken a bad debt within our budget. So I'm just wondering what impact would keeping that debt above our bad debt provision, what impact would that have on our sort of budget and a day-to-day sort of, I suppose, management of our debts?
Financially, I'm not sure of the how to answer that just now. I can look into it, but as I say, we do have a different debt. We have a tolerance level for the bad debt, and it depends what that debt is that we're looking at and collecting. So, for example, if we were looking at housing benefit debt, we would look at we have currently a bad debt policy of 90%, so we're only expected to recover about 10% of that. But obviously, we do cover more of it and recover more of it. With council tax, it's we have a specific policy in place, and what I can say just now round about council tax is we are collecting more because we have a prior year collection that we continually to collect going back to 93, 94, which will have 100% bad debt provision for it. So once we collect more of the older years, we'll be collecting more cash than what we've planned compared to the most recent years.
Okay.
Does that help answer?
I think in part, but I'll mull over it and maybe get back to you. Okay, thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Anyone else got any questions on what's saying online? Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. It's just on the Scottish Security Scotland. It's just a kind of technical question, I suppose. And it's on the 2-child limit payment, which is due to come in. It says in here that this payment will be counted as income, where the Scottish Child payment was not. It was income from the council tax. I'm just wondering whose decision that is, and if there's something. Is that something, if it comes from the Scottish Government, that this council need to implement it as income? I don't know if that's good for this committee or not.
The 2-child cap. Is that
So it's
Bruce?
a two-child limit.
Ah, yeah,
which is
no,
due
ah,
to
yeah.
the middle of that.
Tracy?
Tracy.
Thank you, through you, convener. Just to clarify that the two-child cap limit payment will be taken into consideration as income in the assessment of council tax reduction entitlement, and that will be laid in legislation when it is passed by the Scottish Government. So the council must adhere to the legislation when it's passed. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely, it does help, but I suppose it throws up another other questions when it comes to benefits, when it comes to cliff edges. What other benefits are going to be lost when the first payment is made? But yeah, that's the question. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Tracy. Any other questions? The recommendations, the regulatory committee note the various updates from the finance service in the role of the SMS text message support the collection of council tax from October 2025. The committee is asked to approve the inclusion of the savings strategy outlined in 23, the council freedom 10 finance strategy from December 25 onwards. The committee note that use of emergency powers for awarding contracts for the provision of transport children with additional support needs, medical needs for 2025-26 and 2026-27. Agreed? Right. Item number 5 is the corporate policy performance update and Lorna.
Thank you, convener. This corporate policy and performance update covers 5 matters. The first is the latest data release in relation to the whole government benchmarking framework. Secondly, we provide the participation request annual report. The third is our Gaelic language plan implementation report and also information in Scottish Languages Act 25. The report then moves on to give an update on the Verity House agreement. And finally, we are asking the committee to agree that a review of the Implied Council smoke-free policy be carried out next year once related legislation has passed through Parliament. Thank you, convener.
Any questions from on the performance update? Councillor Natasha Maguire.
Thank you, Chair. It was just on the Verity House agreement. I accept the update that we've got in front of us, but is there any actual date on when the dispute resolution is due to be resolved? Because I'm very aware that this breach took place in 2023. It's now 2025, and obviously we're facing an unprecedented year for having to make cuts to our budgets to take into account shortfalls in our allocation from Scottish Government. So it would be quite interesting to know if there is a deadline date for getting that dispute resolved, and if there has been assurances given to us as a local authority that there won't be any future breaches and that things won't be ring-fenced, that council tax will be discussed with us. I'm aware that the First Minister is very keen to collaborate with us, and I think that would be a key part for us as a local authority, would be having that assurance about council tax and that assurance that the dispute is going to be resolved and no further breaches will occur. So from an office's point of view, I'm just asking, is there any date on when this dispute is due to be resolved?
Thank you, Natasha. More did you get most of that? I think one question I have to say.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, convener.
So I suppose on one aspect, in terms of a timeline dispute resolution process to resolve, that's not information that I have available to me, but I can certainly ask the question of COSLA. And more widely in relation to Scottish Government position in relation to council tax, again, I'm afraid that's not information that I can provide to committee at this point.
Thank you, Morgan, and sorry, convener, for the long question.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, convener, through you. I'm looking at the paragraphs 3.5 onwards, the local government benchmarking framework. I mean, obviously some of the figures in this are alarming. I mean, you know, a 57% increase in the cost of replacement is massive. There's some good news in there about our increased use of community placements, re-registrations on the Child Protection Register. That's worrying. I think
and as is the number of placements over a particular period. But I think I believe it's quite misleading, because a return home is counted as a placement. A return to from an unrelated, from living with unrelated carers, whether that's in foster care or in group residential care, then to return to their own family, whether that's their family circle, and that's counted as a placement as well. So it would be, I think, much more helpful to know what we don't want are children living with unrelated carers in different settings. It's those moves that are potentially very damaging for children, and it's impossible from the way this information is asked for and collected to actually determine that, because some of these moves are positive moves, others are, well, not positive. Is there any? I know we're reporting on what we're asked for, but is there any possibility of influencing things so we can actually work out what is good for our children and what's not so good for our children? Thank you.
Chief Executive, Mr. Timmerson.
Through you, Convener. Councillor Armstrong, we're acutely aware that the local government benchmarking framework is a standard across Scotland, but what we are also aware is that there's a significant overspending of children and families. Officers present today are acutely aware of that overspending, trying to take steps to address that, and indeed that's one of my objectives, to try and do that. Clearly the ambition is to bring children home, because for us to have children looked after by foster carers in Glasgow, when there could be foster carers in Inverclyde, is something that we're very, very keen to do. So both the Chief Officer for the HSCP, Steve McIntyre, and myself are well aware of this, and we'll bring the report back to members on a regular basis, setting out Inverclyde's position specifically as opposed to what's contained within local government benchmarking framework.
Thank you. I do have one other question, but can I ask that now? It's about Scots language. I know in great detail what we're doing about Gaelic, but I'm not sure what we're doing about or planning to do about Scots language. I mean, I made the point earlier that we could conduct this whole meeting in Scots, but we certainly couldn't do it in Gaelic. But I wonder if we, if we know what we're doing. Thank you.
Okay, I think, sorry.
I'm happy to take that question if that's
okay.
okay.
Oh, it's fine. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Convener. So on the Scots language, we're still awaiting guidance in relation to responsibilities. I mean, it could be similar to the Gaelic requirements, but at the moment we're unsure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Kate, you want to come in? Kate?
Hello, sorry, I'm just trying to switch it off. I was just going to add that to go back to the original point about that benchmarking target around the 2 placement moves. This is an issue for us, and it has been raised before with the local government benchmarking framework about the validity and what the actual benchmarking measure actually shows, because it could be a positive or a negative, as Councillor Armstrong has outlined. Just to comment that the cost of residential placement has went up significantly over the last couple of years.
Thank you, Kate. Councillor Kate.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. First of all, just to respond to a couple of points that were raised by Councillor Maguire with regard to the Verity House agreement. The position is that COSLA has been unable to agree a dispute resolution procedure with the Scottish Government. So in a sense, we're in a dispute about a dispute resolution procedure. And in terms of the council tax freeze, the stated position of the government is that they are not prepared to rule out a council tax freeze at this point in time, and we will find out their position once the Scottish Government's budget is announced. But just back to the issue of Scots language, I was a bit surprised, I have to say, by the figures in paragraph 3.35, where 23% of Inverclyde's population claim that they can speak, read and write Scots. Anecdotally, it does appear on the high side. I'm not sure how many people in this room would claim to be able to speak and write Scots.
Yeah. Maybe we could speak it, but we can't write it.
I can speak Bostonian. I'm not so sure I can speak Scots.
Thanks, Stephen. Any other questions? No, right. The recommendation is note the latest performance update about the benchmark framework. Vote the publication of the participation request for the town report, approve and submission of the Gaelic language plan, implementation to, I'm not too sure as the board and Craig to meet the council statutory duties. Note the update and event the house agreement, agree review the Everclyde Council smoke-free policy we carry out next year once the tobacco and vapes bill has progress through Parliament. Agreed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed.
Item number 6, and it's the Freedom of Information Annual Report. Lindsay. Oh, sorry.
Hello, it's
Carol.
okay. Through you, convener, I'm going to present that report. Can
Okay,
everyone hear me
Carol.
okay? Thank you. So through you. So this is the annual report for the Freedom of Information request covering the year 2024. The report provides you with a detailed report and an appendix giving detailed performance information and annotating the key performance across the various indicators and service areas that have contributed to this performance. It also provides you with the historical performance for data comparison purposes. Section 2 of the report provides you an update on the volume of requests that we received as a council. This includes the HSCP's volumes. We received a total of 1,267 FOIs. Breaking that down into the two regimes that they fall into, there was 1,044 requests came in through FOIs and 223 requests through the EIR regime. This showed a small increase of 1.6% of complaints received, more than what we'd received in the previous period. The main noted insight that came from the volumes was the increase in the number of EIRs that we had received due to improved accuracy and categorisation at point of receiving the request. Section 3 of the report covers the nature of requests that have been received by requester type. To summarise that, the top 3 requesters that made requests were those made by individuals, account for 37% of the requests made, followed by media and newspaper requesters accounting for 17.52% of requests and commercial firms at 15.7%. Section 4 of the report looks over the FOI performance for the council and it focuses on timescale management over the course of the year. The on-time performance of requests ended the year at 93%, and the failure rate, which is a combination of requests where we responded late to them or at point of producing the reports we'd not provided a response, finished at 7%. This is a good performance when comparing over the last 7 years of performance, and services must maintain focus on these key performance indicators in the coming years to ensure that we expedite responses promptly as possible. Some areas which may have impacted performance over the course of the year is due to maybe key changes in staff absence or changes in cover over time, and some of the complexity that we've received in the requests presenting some challenges when we've been coordinating the information required. Section 5 of the report provides you with a summary of exemptions that were used and reported to the Information Commissioner when responding to our requests. The Council released in full 74% of requests to requesters and partial disclosures in 10% of cases. We used and relied on exemptions in 4.6% of the cases, and the report covers this in more detail. Section 6 looks at fees charged, and I can confirm that there was no fees charged or levied to any of the requesters when making requests for FOIs or EIRs. Section 8 of the report covers reviews and appeals, of which there were 7 under the FOI regime and 9 under EIRs, and a breakdown of the outcomes that were achieved in those are noted in detail in the report. In summary, the performance has improved over the course of the year. In Q1, there was some noted pressures with the volumes, but we've recovered from that, which was positive to note. The close monitoring and improvement actions that we put in place over the course of the last few years remain to have a positive impact, and the ongoing work will continue on policy and procedures and training to come in the year ahead. I'm happy to answer any questions on the report that you may have, and would ask you note the recommendations within the report.
Thank you, Carol. I'm open up any questions for Carol on report. Chris? Thank you. Carol on the phone now.
Thank you, Convener. I suppose it's an interesting report. It's obviously I've countenanced all my remarks based on the fact that I do believe freedom of information is a great thing for us to have as a country and as a community. But looking at it, this one of the later reports talks about the sorry, I'm going to get my thoughts in line here about our complaints, and it talks about a learning process with respect to that. I'm just wondering whether or not there is a case for maybe having a learning process within the freedom of information request to identify consistent freedom of information requests can maybe be part of our publishing strategy to preempt them, because I'm noting that quite a lot of the actual reports within this isn't saying that there would be a future publication or anything else like that. So I'm just wondering, is there, if you've got 1,000 freedom of information requests, is there identifying a load of information that people are requesting that's consistent throughout the years that maybe can maybe put into our publishing strategy to actually avoid the requirements for the FOIs in the first place?
Yeah, through you, Convener. Just to answer that question, Councillor Curley, in terms of a learning process, I think we look at the requests that we are handling and we do take learnings from them. Perhaps we don't capture them in the same detail that we do for complaints, but that comes through a couple of sources. Any FOI requests that we answer, they go through a review process and learnings taken there and dealt with directly through the service area, but taking that on to the publication element that you've mentioned. So there is work underway within the information governance team where the publication scheme has been updated and there's some new additional information will sit within that, which should help requesters make their requests appropriately to us by using the information that we publish within that to guide them. The second part would be, we've talked about this a number of years about doing a publication process, and we do encourage everyone to actively publish information onto the council's website proactively. There is some views to look at some of the corporate requests that we're doing presently and looking at whether we have some scope to perhaps publish some of those to help maybe cut down the same repeat information being regurgitated in some of these requests. But we also need to be mindful that a publication strategy will assist, maybe cut down a small percentage. It won't take away the need to answer some of the nuances that exist within those requests. So to answer that question, yes, there is an appetite to look at publishing more and also learning from those cases, but it's going to take a strategy to help us develop that, and we just need to be careful in the resources of how we do that to manage that alongside our current statutory obligations to respond to requests. Hopefully that assists answering your question.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I suppose just to echo what Carol said, and that this is something that we are actively working on. We're just trying to balance resources to do that, but it is recognised it is a very good tool to be able to publish as much as possible. But I think that the difficult requests, the really complex ones, will not be impacted by that, and these are the ones that are impacting upon the numbers. So the run-of-the-mill information that's been requested that can be put onto the website is relatively easy to respond to. It's the more complex ones, or the ones where we have to apply exemptions or consider exemptions, that kind of approach won't help with, but certainly would help with a significant proportion.
So personally, thank you for that. I just, because I was looking at the report and noted that well, it's only 10 times you've actually cited excessive cost, which is now in the paper over the page it talks about the potentially charging those or her £100 to process. So is that where it's excessive cost of £100, or is it actually a cost that much in excess of the £100, where we actually draw the line about respect to the cost of exempting that particular FOI? So I just wanted to get an idea about actually, because within the paper it doesn't really identify how much it actually is costing us for the branch undertaking the thousands, approximately FOI requests a year.
Yeah, through you, convener. So in terms of the cost break, the costs that it's costing us, we made a decision not to calculate the costs of the resources allocated to responding to requests anymore. That is covered and annotated within the the main report, and taking that another step further, we have used the excessive cost a number of times this year, and I would give reassurance that when that exemption has been used, there has been considerable officer time involved to produce those responses, and it is used very carefully, and we do question when we're doing that and calculate to ensure that when it is applied, it is justifiably applied in those particular cases. What happens is you calculate the first £100, and then thereafter you calculate everything thereafter that it's going to cost us by way of time and resources, and in all the cases they were excessively beyond the £600 threshold. Hopefully that just gives a sense of when we are using that exemption that it's used appropriately.
So just for my own clarity, you mentioned there a £600 threshold. Can you just confirm?
Yeah, I did. So if it exceeds £600 in officer time and cost to actually respond to the request, which we've got to calculate, so we have to go away and calculate it before we actually can say we're going to refuse it. Any service who is suggesting use of an excessive cost exemption has to give us a calculation. It's verified through the information governance team, and then we would endorse support of use of it to ensure that we're applying it correctly and appropriately. The last thing we want to do is have that challenged at the Commissioner, so we do that appropriately in any request that we receive for that exemption.
And we've never actually asked anyone to contribute to information. So the 10 we've actually rejected. We didn't write back to them saying we can't do this because of cost. But if you were to provide us X pounds, then we would actually be able to undertake that FY request for you.
So generally speaking, through your convener, generally what happens is once you've got an assessment of a particular request, some of these are, they are excessive requests in terms of their level of information. If I used an example to perhaps paint the example, we have received requests where we don't hold the information that the requester is seeking. There's maybe 30 or 40 pieces of information which has been requested from our HR department, and in order to answer that request, it would take us creating information which we're not expected to do. So when it's use, it is thoroughly validated before we would reach that point.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's worth remembering that there has been a real improvement in our performance, but the FOIs continue to take a stout amount of time. I think that should be taken aboard. Any other questions? No. Okay. Recommendations: notes that have been provided on the freedom of information requests received by the Council during 2024, and approve the publication of the annual performance report on the Council website. Agreed? Great. Number 7, again, it's a complaint and report again. Carol.
Through you, convener, thank you. So the complaint handling annual report is covering performance from the 1st of April 2024 to the 30th of March 2025 inclusive. This report includes a detailed performance report covering the performance for Inverclyde Council, the HSCP, Inverclyde Leisure and Riverside Inverclyde. The Council handled 290 complaints in the year and closed 270 of those complaints within the relevant period. Section 3 of the report provides a comparison data on the handling key performance indicators for the current year and the previous 3 years. Members should note that there has been a slight decrease in the numbers when comparing to the previous year when looking at Inverclyde Council and Inverclyde Leisure, but it should also be noted contrastly that the HSCP's complaint volumes increased in the year. Section 3.6 to 3.7 of the appended report breaks down the performance by service areas and the percentage complaints as a total of the complaints that we received. The numbers remain low in some areas within that breakdown. However, those that are proportionally higher in their complaint receipts are historically the correct areas that are receiving those. So I have confidence that those reports are reflecting appropriately. The only area that did not receive complaints and the main set that's within the report is the Riverside Inverclyde. So they didn't receive any in that particular year. Section 3.8 to 3.9 of the report shows the outcome of complaint investigations at each of the stages of the procedure for the collective performance of the council. 60 complaints were upheld, 65 complaints were partially upheld, 100 were not upheld, and 44 complaints were resolved. Section 3.10 to 3.18 reviews the responses to the Council's complaints at each stage for timescale management. The HSCP's performance has shown strain in timescales over the year, and some of the complexity of the complaints have contributed to that, as well as the increase in some of the stage 1 complaints that we've seen come through for that particular area. This is an area of remaining focus within the coming year's performance, and we're working with the HSCP on how they improve that. The Council's performance has noted that timescales have taken to resolve complaints has increased at stage 1 of the complaint procedure. This has seen that collective performance increase the average days that it's taken to respond to our complaints, and a recommended action has been progressed and worked through with the service areas to ensure that they're triaging their complaints at the early stage possible to ensure that they're dealt with under the appropriate stage early in the process to avoid the impact that this has had on our performance. The other area that can be used is the use of a time extension to enable us to keep the performance within the response time scale of 10 days for a stage 1 complaint, and this information has been shared actively over the course of the current performance year on the backdrop of the performance we've achieved during the previous year. The report also provides a breakdown in section 4.6 and 4.8 of the report on the performance that's been received on uplifts and decreased percentages and our timescales and volumes received across each stage of the complaint procedure. In 4.08, it also notes a decision that we have to make in the use of customer satisfaction surveys with complainants post-resolution of a complaint. And we have a decision to make in that in light of a change in approach recommended by the SPSO, which will be worked through internally to make that decision formalised. In section 4.9 of the report and section 5 of the appended report, there's an overview of service improvements and learnings that we've taken, which have been published. It also provides an update in the new complaint handling system that has been implemented within the services during November 2024 as part of the digital modernisation programme, and that we're embedding the use of the new system and using the granularity in the reporting that brings to help us improve our performance. Training has been delivered to support this, and ad hoc coaching continues to be provided to services who are less have lower usage in the system based on their complaint volumes. As we're kind of summarising the end of the performance, section 6 of the report looks at the SPSO's caseload for the Council and the HSCP. We had 13 complaints reviewed by the SPSO, which is one more than the previous year. 4 complaints were dealt with at advice stage and not progressed by the SPSO any further. 9 complaints were dealt with at early resolution stage, and no complaints were investigated in full by the SPSO, which is a positive indication of the actions we've taken. 6 complaints handled by the Council were recognised as good examples of complaint handling, which is a positive note for those services involved in those. Looking at the HSCP, they had 3 complaints, which is a reduction of 5 complaints from the previous year, all handled at early resolution stage, 1 recognised for good complaint handling, 1 that would gain no benefit from being further investigated, and the other was out with their jurisdiction. I would ask the committee to note the content of the report and the recommendations, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have today.
Thank you much for that, Carol.
Thank you.
Any questions? I'm sorry.
Thanks, convener. Yes. Depending on your perspective, complaints are a very valuable resource, and particularly the learning from them. Now, it's possibly me. Paragraph big page 154, page 14 of the actual report, says that paragraph 5.3 says the selection of the learnings is published on the Council's website in each quarter. I I've looked at the website, I've looked at ICON, I put in learnings from complaints and haven't been able to find them. Now, it might just be me, but I would very much appreciate either somebody giving me a steer as to how I can locate them, or indeed make it easier for anyone looking this up. As I say, you know, I'm very much in the camp that complaints are good. Complaints can tell you so much about what you're doing in your service, but only if only if we can be seen to learn from them. So, as I say, I couldn't get these examples, and I just wonder if I've put in the wrong thing. Are they hidden somewhere? Thank you.
Through you, convener, I'm happy to share the link where you can find the quarterly complaint reports that we publish to just make that easier and applicable, and we can have a wee look at how we could improve its accessibility given the challenges you've had to locate that, but they are published within there, so I'm happy to share that link with you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for that, Carl.
Thank you.
Recommendation: notes the annual performance of Inverclyde Council complaint handling procedure. Approves the publication of annual complaint handling report for the council website. Agreed?
Agreed.
Number 8 is the approach to the budget for 2026-27, and Angela.
Thank you, convener. Hopefully you can hear me okay. This is the first report to the committee on the approach to the 26-27 budget setting. The report summarises the budget gap over the next 2 and 3 years. It advises committee of the level of reserves being utilised in the projected budget gap. It provides an update on the Scottish Government medium-term financial plan, which was published at the end of June, and the newly published fiscal sustainability delivery plan, which was published alongside it. Consultation has taken place with the corporate management team and members budget working group, and the main proposals from the report are as follows. The report is proposing a rolling 2-year revenue budget period and a standard 3-year capital budget. It requests early consideration of council tax levels for 26-27. It asks the corporate management team to progress its saving options for 2 years. It is proposing a detailed public consultation during January 2026 and February 2026. Asking committee to approve passporting a share of the Scottish Government additional pay funding for the IJB in 25-26 once the funding source is known. Asks for delegated to progress following severance trials. Says an increase in council tax of 5%, 7.5% and 10% will happen in the residual budget gap. This can be found at section 3.4 of the report. I would also finally like to make committee aware of the typographical error in recommendations 3, 4 and 5 of the report, and that references to the council making decisions should actually read the committee make decisions. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Angela. Any questions? Graham?
Yeah, thanks very much, convener. I'm content with the recommendations that are before us, but I just want to bring attention to recommendation 3. The details are 4.3 of the papers. Just for clarity, so we're going to go to public consultation, absolutely, and the earlier the better. For illustration purposes, officers have given us was it 5%, 7.5 and 10% for council tax rise. So can we have clarity on what the public would like to see? Will it be a bar they can move? Because obviously the local press has picked up the 21% at 3.4. So just to have clarity on what we're actually going to consult on. Is it the 3 figures that are for illustrative purposes only, or is it going to be something different?
Thank you.
I'm happy to see that, convener, because my team will work with the finance in terms of delivering the consultation. We will devise the consultation materials and we'll discuss them further with members budget working group. Obviously the timelines outlined in the report there, and that gives us time to have more concrete proposals to go out to community with, and that will include the council tax levels as well. But happy to further discussion with elected members in terms of how they want to portray that.
Thanks, convener.
Councillor McCabe.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I'm obviously very pleased that this year we've got all parties and independents represented in the members' budget working group. It's always better if everybody's around the same table. We can try and build consensus. There's no doubt we're going to face very difficult challenges this year and next year as well, as we have every year in the 17, 18 years this council, I've been in this council or in this job. And obviously the Greenock Telegraph has helpfully highlighted the assumptions around council tax in the report, potential options around council tax in the report. But I suppose if the report contained £8 million worth of savings, that might have knocked the council tax off the front page, and that's the start choice that we potentially face, because this point in time, and probably not until January will we know whether the Scottish Government's going to seek to impose another council tax freeze or not. But there are very hard choices to be made, and you have to put council tax rises against the potential savings we have to make. But what also people need to recognise is, in terms of council tax, if we don't put council tax up by the rate of inflation, circa 4%, we've actually got less money in real terms next year than we've got this year, because council tax doesn't increase with people's income increasing, it's a flat rate, so we have to put it up to raise more money. So even the context of a potential 10%, we need a bare minimum of 4% council tax to raise the same amount of money. So I think people just need to get that into perspective. But there are no doubt, there are no easy decisions here. But it is better if we're all around the same table, sharing the same information, and being able to try as best we can to work towards achieving a consensus. But I genuinely hope, like the leader of Glasgow City Council, that the Scottish Government doesn't seek to impose a council tax freeze or indeed a cap in the run-up to next year's election, because that would absolutely be against the spirit and the principles and the Very House Agreement, and would again make our chances of trying to achieve consensus within this chamber ever more difficult, as it did 2 years ago.
Thank you. Anybody? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I suppose looking at that paragraph on council tax, obviously it's highlighted the fact it's actually completely covered the anticipated budget gap of 8.05 million. Based on the mid-range assumptions, we would be looking at council tax of approximately 21%. Using the old ready reckoner that the previous chief financial officer used to tell us about 1.5%, implies 1.5% of the revenue budget from the grant funding, BER funding from what they call the Scottish Government. Back calculating that gets me 533 million. So that's the sort of level of scale we require funding required from the Scottish Government if we wanted to balance the budget without having any savings, additional savings, or any increase in council tax, and that's throughout the whole of Scotland. So that's my regular recognise the Scottish Government would need to provide £530 million if they wanted to do that. So that sort of shows the level of expenditure, and knowing what we know with respect to the budget coming from the UK Government and then going into the Scottish Government, having that kind of level of funding, I can't see happening. So we will be in a position where we're going to have to try and work on multiple fronts to create a balanced budget, and we'll have to see how the next few months progress, vis-a-vis council tax, vis-a-vis additional savings or additional funding from the Scottish Government after we get the budget from the UK Government. But yes, I agree, it's good to all have the same information and try and work together to get a solution as much as we can. But yes, it's going to be a difficult few months to see exactly how we actually balance that budget. Thank you.
Anyone else? No. No. I think the contributions are obviously going forward. The way we go through, we've got a very hard task in front of us. Let's hope we can work together to come out some sort of resolution on council tax, whatever. The recommendations is the committee will assess 2-year funding gap Peterborough Council, and the key message was Scottish Covered MPFS, which confirmed that a significant financial challenge facing the council remains. I recommend the council approve the proposed contained this report. The council develops a rolling 2-year revenue budget, set a minimum 1-year budget, with savings developed to progress the balancing of the second year budget. The council develops a 3-year capital budget covering the period for 2026-2029. The council gives early consideration to the council tax for 2026-27. The council approves that the share of additional Scottish Government pay funding for 25-26 is passported to the IGIB once funding has been confirmed. The council notes that the proposed timeline for the public consultation, the chief executive has given delegated authority to progress with the voluntary early release DER trawls associated with the new saving options developed by the CMT, on the understanding that lease will be made on the approval of the committee council. The council note the update on delivering the programme project will present to the council in November's policy sources. Agreed.
Agreed.
And brings on number 9, which is the anti-poverty initiative. Brilliant. Oh, sorry, Ruth, sorry. No, I thought you were there, big boss.
So this is an update report on anti-poverty initiatives, and it's asking for approval for 2 initiatives linked to the EMR reserve for anti-poverty. The first one is looking at an allocation of £50,000 for food insecurity over the winter periods for the next 2 years. We've previously done this before. The second is actually asking for approval from £75,000 for tenant fees for homeless households. That's linked to a change in the Social Welfare Fund criteria. And the third one is asking members to note the ongoing work with the WISE group on relational support. That's not costing the council anything, that's been funded by the Scottish Government. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Pam?
Yeah, thanks, convener. It's not really a question, it's about the WISE group. Over the years, I've had a lot of different contacts with the WISE group. And one of the things that I think they do particularly well is actually providing practical help to families. I mean, sometimes, what's really needed is somebody who can lift that old sofa or whatever, or whatever it is. And I'm always impressed that the WISE group will help families with practical tasks. And I also think locating themselves in the job centre is a very positive move. So it's not a question, it's but to recognise that activities, there's practical support that possibly isn't included in the papers, but it is a key part of the help they're providing to families in providing the job centre initiative. I think it's very positive. Thank you.
Anyone else? Tom?
Thanks, Davina. Happy to support the recommendations. Question just on the unallocated 663,000 in the earmarks reserve. As we've heard in the previous report, we've got £23 million with a budget cap, and undoubtedly that's going to put pressure on the anti-poverty fund as it is in all budgets. And again, that's going to reduce the ability to support some of the projects that we see in Appendix 1. So I just probably had a question would officers consider when we have some earmarks reserved to put further monies into what we've got listed here in order to prolong them for the next few years. We might not have the money, or we might have to take it from elsewhere. Thanks, Davina.
Well, that would be a political decision, but what the officers working group are looking at what to be the knowledge of the officers and the multidisciplinary officers, what we feel at the moment will make the biggest difference to supporting anti-poverty initiatives. So there's still an allocated budget of 663,000, but the officers are working on people bringing forward practical steps that we can take to take that forward.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I'm sure the director will bear my comments.
Graham?
Thanks very much, Gabriel. Yeah, I'm content with what we have in front of us. If I bring up the 75k for the home support, it's just to ask officers if they have any communication and feel aware of what RSLs can do, because many RSLs do provide some of the items that are listed, carpets and washing machines. So it's to ensure that where appropriate we spend our money and where appropriate the RSLs can go into their pocket.
Yes, the officers who brought this forward have good relationships with the RSLs as well, and so they are looking at working in a partnership across the whole of the alliance to see if we can work.
Thanks, Gabriel.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments? No, right, recommendation, approve the delegate powers of Director of Education and Communities and Organisational Development. Allocate 50,000 grant public funded projects linked to food insecurity for 25-26 and 26-27 winter period. Approve the funding of 75,000 allocated to support tenancy for homeless households and notes the ongoing work of the wife. Agreed? Agreed. Number 10 is the repopulation strategy, and the Chief Executive, Mr. Jimson, is going to say a few more words.
Mr. McIlvanny sends his apologies. Since 1981, the area has lost approximately 22,000 residents. And in the period from 1998 to 2021, our population fell by 8.9%, and Scotland as a whole grew by 8.2%. The drivers for depopulation reflect complex, housing-specific challenges, including deindustrialisation, economic restructuring, housing issues, outward migration of younger residents, falling birth rates, and an increase in an older population. The Scottish Government Repopulation Action Plan has provided £30,000, which the Council matched with £90,000 to fund a repopulation officer for 2 years, and that sum also includes some limited project work. The officer was appointed in March of this year. The report before you today provides members with a proposed strategy, which we see as a dynamic document, and an action plan which focuses on the causes of the depopulation to inform current and future strategies and short-term interventions, including place marketing, business support, support for families moving to Inverclyde, support for new to Scotland residents, and support for economic development and education services. Finally, Convener, there is some good news, albeit marginal. The mid-year 2024 population estimates show that Inverclyde has moved from the bottom of the population growth indicators and now has a place of 27 on that scale, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Oh, so I would back in the good news. David, Councillor McKeown.
Yeah, I mean, that information on population stats is helpful. Who knows, it might even feed through to us getting a higher grant from the Scottish Government. And this is a useful start in terms of sort of refreshing the repopulation strategy. And I don't have any issues with any of the actions, but clearly the actions are limited by the availability of funding. And I think we obviously need to do what we can to use this strategy and the challenges we've got around population to press for more funding from various agencies. But I suppose one issue that I think is not really addressed within the strategy is the primary cause of the fall in our population, which is the fall in the natural population. And the reality is that we had the post-war baby boom. Most of the people in this room are probably part of that, or many of them are part of that post-war baby boom. And I was which war? I was the youngest of seven children. But the reality is, we know for decades now, there's not been enough children being born in this community. It's not unique to Inverclyde. It's happening all over Scotland, and Scotland's population has been sustained by net inward migration. And I do think that's an issue that we need to address. And I know it's a sensitive issue, but I think it is something we can't ignore. And it's something that needs to be addressed by national governments as well. UK and Scottish, also regional partners as well, in terms of health, etc. And I think we should be making representations at a UK and Scottish level about more focus on supporting families and encouraging births, to be perfectly honest. And that's why one of the reasons I'm a fundamental opponent of the two-child limit, and why I welcome the fact that the Scottish Government is proposing to mitigate it. I think it should be abolished by the UK Government. That's my view. But I think it goes far beyond that. I think really as a country, as a nation, if we want to have a sustainable population, we need to have more people being born in this country. That's a fundamental fact of life. And that means that we need to take action, as I say, at all levels of government to try and create the circumstances whereby we are growing our natural population. Because if the population continues, the natural population continues to fall at the rate it's fallen, we are going to see, and it's projected that we are going to see the Scottish population fall, because the reality is that there are obviously far more restrictions now in migration, and the overall population will start to fall. And while we've seen in recent years that netward and inward migration helping sustain our population, that won't continue. That's the simple reality of it. It won't continue. Therefore, if we're going to be able to support our population, support our economy, we need more births. That's the simple fact of life. We see we've got an ageing population, which is great. Some of us are probably living longer than we were anticipated to be living when we were born, etc. And that's a great thing. But you need the younger population coming through to be able to support public services, to work in industry, etc. And I do fundamentally think it's something that needs to be grappled with at all levels, including here. There's very limited things that we probably can do locally to address that, but we certainly should be pushing that agenda at a national and regional level.
Thanks. Mr. Johnson, Chris.
So you can do, Councillor McCabe's absolutely correct. Inverclyde with more deaths than births. So the natural change within Inverclyde was with a fall of 503 within our population. If you look at the number of people who are under 16, our population comprises 15.4% versus a Scottish average of 16.2%. 16-64-year-olds, we have 61.6% versus Scotland, which is 63.2%. And in terms of over 65s, our population comprises 23% versus Scotland at 20.5%. So it's clear that our population is increasing in age in comparison to Scotland, and what that also brings in terms of the demands on council services. Probably one of the most significant increases that we've had within our population is in terms of international migration. We've had 730 people coming to Inverclyde, and some of the skills that those people bring to Inverclyde, having just met the Nigerian community over the last 2 months or 3 months, is that there are many of these people very overqualified for the jobs that we're doing, but they form a key part of our community.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Yeah, I'll just touch upon comments by Councillor McCabe. First of all, on to my main comment. Yeah, I agree that just generally throughout the UK, Scotland and indeed Inverclyde, I think we are currently at 1.37 approximately births per female, rather than the 2.1 that's required for a sustainable population. So if you do the simple maths, it doesn't take long before the natural population just peters out. So yeah, but that's something that happens in the whole of Europe as well. We do have a lot less children being born to people, and that's because of life choices. People want to start families later, etc. So we do have to look at how we can change that. But one of the things we do have, my main point, one of the things we do need to look at, and it's part of the thing to look at within this report, is about the general priority areas. It talks about reindustrialisation and the policies with respect to what's called rebuilding our economy within Inverclyde, with the Economic Social Economic Task Force, and also the Inverclyde Economic Growth Strategy document, which we've also just recently seen. as part of this council. But I was just wondering, that sort of documents, the growth strategy isn't part of the action plan. So I was just wanting to try and get an idea about why that's not there, because for my mind, getting jobs into the area will be certainly, I think, gives a little bit of a shot in the arm with respect to population.
Mr. Timothy.
They're all linked. When you think about the task force initiatives of business premises, housing, skills, that all relates to repopulation, because having the attractive jobs, having the attractive premises, having the houses for the workers, and having workers with those skills, it links. So these are all economic development interventions, and at the end of the day, Mr. McIlvany has an eye over all of them currently. So I have no concern about anything sitting in my solution.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McVeigh, then Councillor Jackson, and Councillor Robertson.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. The report's got a lot of positive actions in there, which will, the outcome will be that we sustain and grow our population, which is big drive on the council, one of our main aims. But what I don't see in the report, Mr. Jimmerson, is any timescales or targets what we look at here, because my concern is that we drift and we don't assess where we are perhaps in 2, 3, 5, 10 years time. Thanks.
Through you, Convener, I draw Councillor McVeigh's attention to the action plan, and in the right-hand column there are dates contained within that. So, for example, March 26 is their quarterly against September 25. I'm conscious that there are sums of money allocated, and I would draw your attention, for example, to the relocation support, where it's a £10,000 grant for people coming to Inverclyde, and that intervention is 20 grants of £500. In terms of support to study, it's 20 grants of £300. So we've got the detail behind that, and we have targets against those. So happy to share with members a regular update in respect of progress associated with that, and then members can see report that through a transparent lens.
Yeah, I did notice the date, Mr. Jim. I was just looking at your address. We will get a further report to assess progress as we go on, whether what we're doing is succeeding or perhaps not succeeding, what we're going to try different. But thanks for your response.
Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I suppose one of the things for you to address is that in a coincidence that over the years, 20, 30 years, the number of births has fallen as the economic challenges facing families have increased. We look at Inverclyde, a low wage economy, there's no houses being built. I don't think it's that families want to have one child. But if having another child means that you need another bedroom, can't get another house, one partner has to take care of childcare, the economic living standards fall. And I think, just an observation, that the challenge of increasing the population is far more difficult than what we think. There doesn't seem to be any interest in increasing living standards. We look at the cuts to benefits which continue. There's no safety net there. Cuts to welfare, cuts to social security across the board. Mortgages are going up, inflation is going up, interest rates are going up. It's very difficult for any family now to even consider, even if they wanted to have another child. The houses are not there, the wages are not there. The days of one parent being able to financially sustain a household are long gone. So it's a very difficult situation we find ourselves in, and that's why we should welcome the new Scots. They're an addition, but at some point that same place is going to apply. The housing problem will be a low income economy. So it's a challenge, it's definitely a challenge.
Thank you. Elizabeth, Councillor Robertson.
Thank you for bringing me on, Convener. I'm just obviously looking at the recommendations of the paper, and there's a real, obviously we're proposing this moving forward into the Alliance board, and clearly there's a partnership impetus with the paper. It's not just the council's resources or activities that are going to make all of this happen, so it is a partnership issue. I'm just wondering, I know there will have been partnership involvement in the development of the strategy, but I'm just wondering if there's any comment in terms of that. And I'm also just wondering if I can double check on some assurances that this will be squeezed into the October Alliance Board rather than the December Alliance Board, so that we don't have any delay in things moving forward from a practical and a governance point of view.
Mr Jimmerson.
Through you, Convener. Absolutely, Councillor Robertson, we need partners involved in this, and partners have been consulted in parts of the strategy. Didn't want to be presumptive in assuming that the committee would approve this policy today. So therefore, if the members are minded to support the policy, then it would be an intention for it to be, as you put it, squeezed in with your permission to the agenda for the October Alliance. So,
any other comments? I think that the report's very sober, and obviously we've moved a couple of spots, but I can just give you an example. Today I was doing a proof of life, and there was someone from Romania who, without the frost, they became British citizens. And the lady is a consultant at the Queen Elizabeth in Glasgow, stays in Kingston Dock. And her father is a general in the army. I actually love it here, you know, and now she's a wee girl who attends school in Glasgow. And she was saying to me, even her colleagues within the Great Glasgow Clyde are very reluctant to come here for they get a chance of a job here. She did a client on Wednesday. She said that she did it because she loves you, but oh, you do it, you're down there, you know. Last IJB we done new, probably appointed on the trade union rep, and she works in Inverclyde Royal Acts and Mercy Department. She says it's a time that people were to look at Inverclyde and tell me it's a good place to come, a good place to work, because at the moment there is a perception that if you go there, it's the end of your career, not the start of it. So I think the public bodies that we are all represented on have got a big job to do as well, to promote Inverclyde, to promote this place as a place to come and live and work, and not just be happy for people to stay in Berdon, Mulgai, whatever it is, you know, because there is a good opportunity here, and these public bodies should be pushing it to make sure these people come down here to work. That's my talk with. Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Elizabeth, hand still again.
It absolutely does. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Okay.
Your hands up.
The recommendation is approve the repopulation strategy, agree to print update to the Alliance Board, devise the plans and secure support for the development of the strategy. Agreed.
Agreed.
Number 11 is the Scottish Government Board for Government in this morning.
Thank you, Convener. The programme for government sets out the Scottish Government's policy and legislative goals for parliamentary year 25-26. The appendix to this report sets out programme's initiatives, which are the implications for Inverclyde Council. These are mapped against the themes of the council plan, together with the details of the appropriate council directorate. These have been the subject of discussion through our directorate management teams. And where relevant, actions from the programme for government will be incorporated in the deliver improvement plans, following which documents will be submitted to the appropriate service committees for approval. Happy to take questions.
Any questions? Oh, not online. Thanks for Bob. Recommendations, the council, the committee notes the implications of the programme for the council together with facts required the sponsor of the publication. It is recommended that committee notes the relevant actions from the PGG 2024-25 be incorporated into committee, deliver the improvement plans as appropriate, and agrees to receive the report of the updated policy and resources for approval. Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay. On number 12 is the Commissioner of Advice, Direct Scotland distribution of heating and support fund, and it's roof again.
Yes, this is another report linked to the work again of the Officers Group. So we're asking the committee to approve the commission with Advice Direct Scotland to deliver a working age with fuel support scheme for 25-26. And if I draw your attention to paragraph 4.2, you'll see the proposed eligibility criteria for that payment. And if I draw your attention again to the final bullet point where we're looking at gross annual household income for £27,000, but we looked after or care experienced young people, that would be £32,000. So we've looked at care experienced people being a protected characteristic within a Clyde Council. So we're asking committee also to approve the allocation of the support fund, but also a direct award to Advice Direct Scotland to administer the fund on our behalf. Officers simply do not have the resources or the capacity to be able to administer the fund, and Advice Direct Scotland have extensive experience of similar work across Scotland. We're also saying that we will provide an interim expenditure report within 3 months of the fund launch, but the Office recommendation is that the scheme is closed to new applicants if or when the fund becomes exhausted. And the final recommendation of this report is that we withdraw the supplementary £100 Scottish Welfare Fund as the mid-range fuel support schemes comes in. That's me. Happy to take any questions, and my colleague Tracy Bunting is on the call, who has an extensive technical knowledge of this matter.
Councillor Brooks.
Thanks very much, Convener. Yeah, certainly welcome the report. I just got a few questions on it. What are the criteria to meet the application? The criteria for the application? The applicant must be 16 to 24-year-olds. I just wonder why it's 24. You know, what happens to a 25-year-old, a 26-year-old? So just interested in why the line was drawn at 24. Second question, the director has said about our capacity, but so within a paper on item 8, we've just given the chief executive, voluntary redundancy rights to look to the troll BER, and yet we're paying a third-party organisation a substantial amount of money to run it. So I just wonder, is there no way at all that we can protect our own staff by having this in-house and publicly available information? So I'm pretty sure they'll look at me. Advice Direct Scotland, £13 million income last year. So they are a very large third sector organisation, and yet we are going to give them extra money where potentially they're making redundancies. I just wonder if officers can help me balance those two things.
Ruth?
Perhaps coming on the first and then go to Tracy, or I'll come on the second and go to Tracy for the first. So we met with Advice Direct Scotland. They are a very well established third sector partner. And we were impressed by not only their knowledge, but also the values that underpin them. And they also have a hotline to the utility companies that can provide better support for people. So yes, we were, Advice Direct Scotland have administered similar funds across Scotland, and they have a track record of doing so. I'll hand over to Tracy to look at the 16 to 24 age group. I know there was a lot of discussion about the criteria for this.
Tracy?
Thank you, and through you, Convener. The criteria for the age band of 16 to 24 is there as one of 5 criteria that an individual could meet in order to qualify. So that would be a criteria on its own. But if a household where the adults are 25 or over, if they have a child under 5, they would qualify as long as the income criteria was met, as well as households with disabilities who are aged 25 or over. So it's one of the 5 criteria. I'll just point you to section 4.2 of the report. It's the second set of bullet points. So as well as meeting the income criteria, as well as the other matters, if they have to meet one of the 5.
Okay, thank you very much. I did need 4.2. I just wondered why it was 24, not 25.
I think it's because the definition of a young person is under the age of 20.
Okay, thanks. That's good.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Convener. I'm kind of lucky that the last year we've had a lot of dealings with Advice Direct Scotland. As somebody may not be aware, in Scotland there was no regulator, there was no advice body. for anybody connected to a domestic biomass heating system, which I know I do go on about. But if you don't have any advice or support, it's very difficult. So as when it comes to you buy warm your house and you know, tackle fuel poverty. My dealings with Advice Service Scotland has been very supportive. Any advice they give is very relevant in their knowledge. You know, considering the amount of people I try to put in touch with Ofgem, and you would never get anywhere. It could be weeks, months trying to get an answer. For the size of Advice Direct Scotland, they're very quick to get back to you and they're very personal. You will always get a phone call back. Next in October, first week of October, they're sending somebody down to William Hill to attend a public meeting, which is quite rare for a large organisation to do. So they're more than willing to come out and engage with the public. They're more than willing to come out and let you know what services and advice are available to them, which I find quite refreshing for not such a large organisation, but a well-established organisation. So I fully welcome the addition of them to the council to come out and help us tackle fuel poverty.
Councillor Colley.
Thank you, Convener. I suppose, first of all, obviously it's unfortunate we are still in a situation where we're having to make these sort of decisions. I know this is a 1 year thing. Obviously it's something we have to do, and we're hoping that will, I suppose that there'll be a further reduction in the cost of energy, etc. But I suppose we're in a situation where the energy market in the UK is broken. It doesn't make any sense, in particular in Scotland. We've got a situation, we've got a large amount of surplus energy, and we're still living in a situation where significant proportions of our population are in fuel poverty. So it is welcome mitigation, but it's mitigation we'd hope that if we designed the market properly, which we had the chance to do recently, that this would not be necessarily something you'd have to do in Inverclyde. But I do welcome that we are making this proposal that should have a positive impact to the people of Inverclyde. Just regarding 4.2, when you look at the last two bullet points, I take it there's an or in there, isn't there, really, between these last two, because you see there's 27,000 or if you get an experienced young person with up to 32,000. Just a clarification. Otherwise you wouldn't meet all the criteria. Yeah. So that's what I was assuming when I was reading it. So no, that's fine. And I just wonder, and I know it's important. The 32,000, is there any basis for that number, or how was calculated the fact that somebody with care experience? I just want to ensure that we actually get the right level of support there. Plus the fact that we do want to actually support a care experienced young person, and we've got a £5,000 increase in where we will provide this money. I'm just wondering what's the basis that 5,000 has come up with. Could it be 6,000? Could it be 7,000? I'm just trying to get an idea of what evidence we've used for that.
I don't know if Tracy wants to come in on that.
Tracy?
Certainly, through you, Convener. That was certainly the income that's recognised as being the sort of basic income that someone who has experienced the care system. It's recognised that would be a reasonable value of income, gross income, to recognise their life experience.
So is this a sort of like a national number that we're utilising?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any national, I don't think there's any national comparison for this. I think the key one is the household income of £27,000 across the board. I think what the CMT wanted us to do is to give an advantage to those who are care experienced. So I don't think the additionality is perhaps the pertinent point. It's the fact that it was just given there so that it would help them, because we know they have had adverse circumstances, to give them help.
I suppose, and it's just about making sure that we're providing enough support. Is that something we can possibly review as part of this to ensure that we are providing the right level of support? I'm just conscious of the fact that if the 27,000 is a national sort of number, then I just want to make sure that the 32,000 is the right number, and it shouldn't be a wee bit higher. I'm just it's just on me, I'm just trying to think that about this with respect to the evidence and how you actually ensure that we are providing the right level of support.
So, through yourself, convener, I would be suggesting that we implement the 32,000, but review around the number of applications that actually are made that exceeds that threshold. Because I would love to think that there's care experienced young people out there with an income of 32,000. But Ruth is right. It was a discussion at the CMT to give care experience more advantage over other young people, bearing in mind that in many circumstances they do not have an adult in the background supporting them when they are in a low-income household. So we felt that it was appropriate to give it an advantage, but it's something that we would want to monitor as opposed to put it up, because I would like to see, and I think it would be a success if we got applicants that were exceeding 32,000.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor McKay.
Yeah, and I can understand why the question's been asked by Councillor Cullick has asked the exact same question at the pre-agenda meeting, but I suppose we do need to put it into context. We're talking that a single person, we're talking about £150, so or £100, sorry. So it's not a great deal of money. It's a contribution. It's a help towards their bills. So I mean, this is obviously officer's subjective view. And I suppose let's run with it and see where we are, and obviously we'll report back next year in terms of how the scheme has worked in practice.
Okay, any other questions, comments? No, okay, recommendations: approve the Commissioner of Advice direct Scotland to deliver the Working Age Winter Fuel Support Scheme for 25-26. Agree the allocation of 382,000 from the Heating Support Fund to ADS, which includes a direct award of £33,160 to ADS to administer the fund. Great. Instruct the officers to implement and deliver the model, the mechanism, and provide interim expenditure report within 3 months of the fund launch. It is recommended that the scheme be closed to new applicants if the fund is exhausted. It is recommended that the committee approve the proposal to withdraw the supplementary 100 Scottish Welfare Fund fuel cost grant payment, coincide with the launch of the Working Age Winter Fuel Scheme. Agreed. Agreed. Okay. Number 13 is the review of the performance management framework. Lorna, back to you.
Thank you, convener. The new performance management framework was developed and approved by the Policy and Resources Committee in March 2023. As it was a new framework, we agreed that after a couple of years we should do a review of it. That review has now been undertaken. A summary of proposed changes to the performance management framework is available in Appendix 1, and the updated framework itself is in Appendix 2. I should highlight there are no major changes proposed, but the bullet points at 4.2 summarise this. Happy to take questions.
Any questions for Lorna? Stephen? Okay.
Not so much a question on the sort of framework, but I suppose a question on the provision of sort of performance information to elected members. We've had discussions before in terms of the systems, the electronic systems we use, that potentially elected members could maybe get access in terms of dashboards and things like that for that information. Are we any closer to being able to provide that information? I know you wouldn't trust us with actually getting in and changing information, but read-only access in terms of being able to sort of monitor.
Thank you to you, convener. The system isn't currently set up in that way in terms of dashboards that will be relevant and accessible to elected members. And as you're aware, obviously we tend to use these kind of report formats to share information with members. I happen to have further discussions around what will be useful to you.
It's just that obviously there are the sort of national frameworks that allow sort of dashboards and things like that, and we can access them. I think it would be useful in terms of going forward potentially that we could get that sort of access and sort of real-time information.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else? No? It's recommended the committee approve the updated performance management framework as appended in the appendix 2. Agreed?
Agreed.
That is on to 14, which is the Upfield Council Innovation Network. Or
Thank you, Convener. In 2022, this committee agreed with council should apply to a member of the Cooperative Councils Innovation Network for an initial period of 3 years, and we brought back annual reports in relation to that membership. The network is a non-party political active hub for cooperative policy, development, innovation and advocacy. And you'll note Councillor Cassidy's involvement within the Cooperative Councils Network. Paragraph 3.4 outlines benefits from membership, and the report then goes on to outline involvement today and potential future opportunities for Inverclyde Council. And the proposal is that the committee agrees to continue membership of the network until 2027. Thank you.
thank you. Councillor Cullen.
Yeah, I must admit, I thank officers for the report, but I must admit, I'm looking at the report, I'm finding it difficult to make a case for why we should remain as part of the network. I know it's a small amount of money, but and it's paid through the non-paid inflation contingency, but for after 3 years, I must admit, I'm struggling to see where we've had the that sort of benefit from it. Even with the modical small sums involved, that we're actually getting the bang for our buck. So I don't much I'm struggling with the paper on this one.
Officers are reflected on this network, and we don't believe that we've maximised the opportunities that are available to us. So whilst the limited benefit that we've had, we believe that we can get more out of it, and we need to be more proactive in seeking out opportunities as part of the network, as opposed to the limited success that we've had to date. Councillor Curley, we believe that the ongoing investment is merited and that it's a relatively small sum, as you've highlighted, and there are greater sums or greater funding available to us within the network, and we will seek to exploit that over the next period.
I suppose just when we come back in then, so I think as Mona said, we get a report per year. I suppose if we are going to agree to this, and it's would it be possible to get a report sooner than that, just to see what sort of additional strategies we have developed and what we're actually able to achieve? Because I'm conscious that we want to make sure we are getting if we are doing the next 2 years, we are certainly maximising our opportunities there, and what strategies we're going to do to achieve that.
So you can, if the committee were minded, we'd do it every 6 months.
Okay.
Councillor Kate?
Yeah, I mean, I think Councillor Curley presents a fair challenge. I mean, in terms of joining the network in the first place, there was a sort of principal reason, and that was to send out a message that this council wants to be a cooperative council and thinks that the values of the cooperative movement are something that would be worthwhile both employing within the council, but in terms of the wider community. And I think it's probably fair to say we haven't got out at what we were looking to get out at. And I think that is in part down to the fact that to get something out, you need to put something in. And I just don't think we've been able to prioritise at an officer level enough engagement in the network to get out what we potentially could get out of it. And I think it is important. And that's why I support the fact that it's only for another 2 years up to the end of the life of this council, that we do need to make sure that we are actively engaged in the network. I know Councillor Cassidy is very actively engaged in the network, and I suppose he's certainly got a lot out and put a lot into it in terms of both sort of learning and making a contribution, and his contribution is very valued by the network. But really, if as a council we're going to get something out of it, we do need the input from our officers to engage in the various networks within the cooperative council's innovation network and learn from that good practice and potentially share our own good practices as well. So I certainly think we should give it another 2 years and then review the position.
Yeah, but I'm content then with the call to agree with that, but I think I'd like to see a report in 6 months. That's okay.
Any other questions, comments? In the recommendations, the recommended policies will see agreed.
Councillor Cassidy wants to go and convener.
Sorry?
Councillor Cassidy.
Oh, Councillor Cassidy. We're late in there, mate.
Thanks, Peter. I don't disagree with some of the comments you was making about college. I think there's especially with the chief executive there, I think there's still a lot of opportunity, that we can access the things through the network. I know I've benefited from a lot of learning that I've got through it. We've shared a lot of learning things the council has done over the last couple of years, from the Meliora Fund to Warm Hands of Friendship, and most recently the successful outcome of our last community council elections was shared in the organisation's latest case study pack. There was a lot of positive feedback from that from colleagues down south in England and in Wales as well, over that shared learning. And I've committed as well to work with the officers to make sure that they get value out of the network and we get access to some of the different pots of money that's available to fund projects. And in fact, one of the projects was funded by the network for the council last year. That was a project through the Alliance Board.
Thank you, Councillor. Recommendations agree extended membership to the core of innovation work until 2007. Could we add on when we get the report back in 6 months? Okay. Great. Yeah, that's finished for today. Thank you for your attendance today.
Thank you, everybody.